All right, boys and girls, today we're going to begin section 5.4, sum and difference formulas. So a couple things you need to know. You you could use your unit circle, so have that handy. And the other thing is I would write the sum and difference formulas on some index cards. So those are the ones that are on page 377. You're going to be using them often, so it's better to actually write them down and see if you could start memorizing them. Okay, so I would suggest those two things. Have your unit circle nearby and those index card or that chart. Okay, here we go. For example 1, we're going to be evaluating a trig function. Specifically, they're giving us tangent of 75 and they want the exact value. So a couple things you should know. Depending on your unit circle, hopefully you already have your angles labeled all. If not, you can label them all. But I just have the first quadrant labeled. So we have 30, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. We don't have a 75-degree angle, but what we can do is we can create 75 degrees by adding two angles, 30 and 45. Okay, so again, you're going to refer to this. So tangent of 75, I'm going to split it into two angles. So we're going to write it as tangent of 30 degrees plus 45 degrees. Okay, and together, of course, that gives me 75. Okay, so the property that we're going to be applying is actually this property. So tangent u plus v equals tangent of u plus tangent of v over 1 minus tangent of u plus tangent of v. Okay, and of course u and v will refer to 30 and 45. Okay, so as you see me writing, just know that that's where I'm getting it from. Okay, so here we go. Let's get started. So again, u is going to be 30 degrees and v is going to be 45 degrees. And a couple things you should know is tangent of 30 degrees. You can figure that out using your unit circle. I'm not going to go through this because you've already practiced doing this in previous sections, okay? So you can just use your unit circle to figure these out. So tangent of 30 is square root of 3 over 3. And tangent of 45 is just equal to 1, okay? So now this is where we use our, again, you can either use your index card or refer to the page, okay? So I can break this down as tangent of u, which is square root of 3 over 3, okay, plus tangent of v, which is 1, over 1 minus tangent of u, which is square root of 3 over 3, times tangent of v, which is 1. Okay, and that's what I have so far. So this would be the setup. Everything else is just like simplifying it and just cleaning it up, okay? So let's just work with the denominator. Square root of 3 over 3 plus 1. We have to get common denominator, so we're going to multiply by 3 top and bottom, so numerator and denominator. Over here, square root of 3 over 3 times 1, it'll just give me square root of 3 over 3. And of course, we cannot subtract unless we have common denominator. So same thing, we're just going to multiply by 3, numerator and denominator. Okay, so let's clean this up. So now we end up with square root of 3 plus 3 over 3, that's my numerator, over 3 minus square root of 3 over 3. Okay, so this is what the numerator simplifies to, and this is what the denominator simplifies to. Okay, and we're dividing a fraction by a fraction. So let's clean this up some more. Okay, so remember when you divide a fraction by a fraction, what you'll do is basically multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. So I've written it as the reciprocal. And then what you'll notice is the 3's will cancel out. Okay, so I wrote it here because I ran out of room. So now let me clean it up some more and let me do it on a separate whiteboard. Okay, so now what I have is square root of 3 plus 3 over 3 minus radical 3. And again, these are just the rules of fractions, so we're just simplifying it. Okay, so now I'm going to clean up this denominator by basically multiplying it by the conjugate to the top and bottom. So 3 plus radical 3 times 3 plus radical 3. Okay, and part of the reason why I'm doing it to the conjugate is because this is going to be the difference of squares, which ultimately gets it down to a numerical value. So ready? Again, you're just doing FOIL to the bottom and FOIL to the top, okay? So the denominator, me doing FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, and you can do that. I can do this one really quick in my head, okay? Because it's the difference of perfect squares. Basically what it comes down to, it'll be 3 squared minus radical 3 squared, because it's the difference of squares. So 3 squared is 9, and then radical 3 squared is 3. So this is 9 minus 3, okay? Which just gives me 6. So 6 is my denominator. In the top, we're going to get, let's see, radical 3 times 3, which gives me 3 radical 3. Again, I'm going to just do FOIL. And then radical 3 times radical 3, that'll give me 3. And then 3 times 3, that'll give me 9. And then 3 times radical 3. Okay. And then cleaning this up, I'll end up with 12 plus 6 radical 3. Okay. Which is nice because your denominator is a whole number. Okay. Now I would say we're almost done, but now you can simplify. And what you would simplify is coefficients and denominator. So if you look, a greatest common factor between all of these 12, 6, and 6 would be 6. So to simplify this, I would end up with 2 plus radical 3. Oops. And that's my final answer. Okay. Okay, so just to quickly go over this again, tangent of 75, I can break it down as tangent of 30 plus 45. Again, and the reason why I'm breaking it down this way is because we don't have tangent of 75. So we just broke it down to 2 angles. And then you can find this using the unit circle, okay? And then so we end up with tangent of u, in this case it's 30, square root of 3 plus 1. And then all I did was find the common denominator, so we multiply 3 to the top and bottom. And then over here we end up with 1 minus square root of 3 over 3 times 1. But again, common denominator, because those are the rules of adding and subtracting fractions, okay? Oops, and in doing that, we end up with square root of 3 plus 3 over 3. So I just made them into one fraction, okay? Because they'll have the same denominator. And same thing to the bottom, 3 minus radical 3 over 3. And then since we're dividing a fraction by a fraction, we basically end up changing it to multiplication and we do the reciprocal, okay? And then to clean it up, we end up with square root of 3 plus 3 over 3 minus radical 3. And then I multiply by the conjugate. And that's to make the denominator a whole number. And again, you basically do FOIL, but I know that this is the difference of squares, so this is what I end up with. 6, and the top, again, just doing FOIL, 12 plus 6 radical 3. And you can simplify it by greatest common factor, and then we end up with 2 plus radical 3. And that's it, okay? Let's do one more. Okay, so for part B, the directions are the same, but now that instead of a degree, they gave us a radian. So we have tangent pi over 12. So using your unit circle, pi over 12 would be somewhere here, because obviously the bigger the denominator, the smaller the angle would be. So if you notice, we have pi over 6, pi over 4, and pi over 3. We don't have pi over 12. So what we would do, excuse me, would be to create pi over 12 from the radians given. So just like we did earlier, okay? This time, since we have much larger radians than pi over 12 or much bigger fractions, obviously we're not going to be adding radians or fractions to get pi over 12 since it's much smaller. So most likely we're going to be subtracting, okay? So here's kind of a shortcut. If you don't know which ones to subtract, then what you could do is just try a combination of any of those, okay? But to be honest, they're all they all are basically factors of 12. So you could pretty much pick any of them, okay? So, but what you could do is do like pi over 12 and then say subtract. And you could just pick one. You could subtract pi over 4. Okay, and if you do the math, you would multiply it by 3. And so pi over 12 minus 3 pi over 12 would end up with 2 pi over 12, which is pi over 6. Okay, and then this one is minus, right? Because this is bigger. So then again, this is a really big fraction, pi over 4. Okay, see, pi over 4 is much bigger than pi over 6. So obviously we're going to take pi over 4 and subtract pi over 6. Okay, so the way that I would write it would be tangent of pi over 4 minus pi over 6. Okay, and so now you're going to be using the bottom property. Okay, again, either have your index card nearby or refer to it on page 377. So if you notice, it's very similar to the one we just previously used where we had to add. If you look at the difference is when we're adding in the numerator, and in the denominator we're subtracting. When we're subtracting in the numerator but adding in the denominator. So they're very similar. Okay, so here we go. This is pi over 4 is going to be u and pi over 6 is going to be v. Okay, now if you look at your unit circle, pi over 6 is 30 and pi over 4 is 45. So these are two that we already used. So technically, ready? Tangent of 45 degrees should be 1. Okay, or in this case, tangent of pi over 4 will be 1. Okay, and then tangent of 30 degrees, we said earlier, was square root of 3 over 3. But remember, now we're not using 30 degrees, we're using pi over 6. So tangent of pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 3. So luckily, we were able to use the ones that we had earlier. Okay. All right, so here we go. So again, just kind of follow the formula. Okay, so we have tangent of u, which is 1, minus tangent of v, which is square root of 3 over 3, over 1 plus tangent of u, which is 1 times tangent of v, which is square root of 3 over 3. We're pretty much going to do the same thing we did earlier, okay? So again, common denominators, okay, in order for us to be able to add and subtract. So now we end up with 3 minus radical 3 over 3 over 3 plus radical 3 over 3. Okay, and remember, sorry if there's a glare, okay, I'll make sure I move it. You're dividing a fraction by a fraction. So pretty much what you're going to end up now is 3 minus radical 3 over 3 times 3 over 3 plus radical 3. And then, of course, the ones will simplify. I'm sorry, the 3's will simplify to 1. Okay, so it's very similar to what you just did, okay? And since I ran out of room, let me grab my second whiteboard. So now we end up with 3 minus radical 3, okay, divided by 3 plus radical 3. Okay, so remember, we want to multiply by the conjugate to get rid of that denominator. So now we have to multiply by 3 minus radical 3. Okay, so now I can go a little bit faster since we did one earlier. So remember, this is going to be the difference of squares, which is just what we got earlier. So this would be over 6. Okay, and in the top, when I do FOIL, I'm going to end up with 9 minus 6 radical 3 plus 3. Okay, Again, I'm just doing FOIL, but I can go a little bit faster this time. Okay, and then let's simplify that some more. So 9 plus 3 is 12. 12 minus 6, radical 3 over 6. And again, you can simplify your coefficients. Okay. So now we would end up with 2 minus radical 3. Okay. So very similar to the previous one. Very similar. Even our answer, except this one's minus. Okay. All right, awesome. So now you guys have enough to try the checkpoint. So try the checkpoint, check your answers, and if you have any questions, come see me in the chat.